I'd like to welcome everybody to this breakout session. Thank you for choosing breakout session 3. So we'll be exploring NB Power's procurement opportunities and their Indigenous Suppliers Guide. And guests will be able to learn about how NB Power is committed to working with Indigenous communities, businesses, and employers, as well as what these opportunities are. So I'd like to introduce Joanie Bradshaw of NB Power. She's the procurement manager for NB Power and has been with the organization for 23 years and manages the procurement department, which includes inventory, replenishment, tendering, and contracting. So Joanie, thanks for joining us, and over to you.
Thanks for having me. I'm just going to share my screen, and I apologize for my voice, everyone. I'm just trying to get over a cold. So what I wanted to go through today is actually the Indigenous Supplier Guide that NB Power has put together. So this was the procurement department in conjunction with our First Nations Affairs department. We put this brochure together, and this has been distributed to all of the communities across New Brunswick. So I'm not sure if anyone on the call has seen this previous year or not, but I thought it was really important. This is really a good tool and a good resource for us to go through. So this is a pamphlet that's available, and we can certainly send it to you after this presentation. So this is business opportunities with NB Power. So I'm just going to go through, I guess, a little bit of history here about NB Power. So NB Power maintains one of the most diverse generation fleets in North America, with a combined total generating capacity of 3,790 megawatts, plus additional installed capacity of 329 megawatts of wind and 259 megawatts of other renewable capacity provided by third parties through power purchase agreements. NB Power is responsible for the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity that powers the lives and livelihoods of more than 400,000 customers across New Brunswick. Our employees, more than 2,600 strong, delivered safe, reliable energy to our customers by way of 21,358 kilometers of distribution lines, substations, terminals, and switchyards that are interconnected by 6,905 kilometers of transmission lines. And New Brunswickers' needs for electricity varies greatly with the seasons, which energy usage reaches its highest peaks in the cold winter months. To meet the wide swing of demand and make sure New Brunswickers have the power they need when they need it, NB Power maintains standby generation with extra capacity. As a Crown Corporation, NB Power's owner and sole shareholder is the Government of New Brunswick. NB Power reports to the government through the Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development. The government's expectations are expressed through legislation, policies, and mandate letters. Just a summary of what I just kind of went through. So First Nations Affairs and Indigenous Relations. So NB Power's First Nations Affairs and Indigenous Relations team is the first point of contact within the organization for First Nations to receive and respond to customer service requests and inquiries. It is also the central hub providing guidance and support to NB Power departments with matters involving First Nations. The department's purpose is to foster positive relationships with First Nation communities by addressing issues and interests, providing customer service, facilitating resolution of legacy issues, as well as consultation activities. So workforce development. Indigenous people are an important part of NB Power's workforce. We are committed to increasing the representation of qualified Indigenous employees at all levels of our workforce. So if you're interested, please visit the career section at nbpower.com under About Us and in Careers. A general application and employment equity voluntary self-identification questionnaire is available. And I'm actually really happy to share that we actually just onboarded a new employee through Jedi. She just accepted our offer today. So starting on Monday, December 6th, we actually have a candidate from the Jedi internship that will be starting with us at the NB Power Procurement Department. So we are very excited to have her on board with us. First Nations Affairs strategic approach. So engagement. So we focus on building relationships both internally and externally with First Nations groups and communities through relationships established with consultative representation and consultation agreements. Meaningful engagement and consultation occurs. Education, cultural awareness, and sensitivity. So we focus on educating NB Power's organization on understanding and appreciating First Nations culture, improving communications and relationships. Employment, so we focus on facilitating employment and capacity building opportunities for First Nations. When possible and practical, it enables members to continue to reside in their home community as well as include community members as subcontractors. So how to do business with NB Power? NB Power is committed to developing and maintaining relationships with Indigenous people that demonstrate mutual respect. We support procurement opportunities for qualified Indigenous-owned businesses and the development and the capacity of Indigenous suppliers who can provide goods and services to NB Power. As a Crown corporation, NB Power is committed to provide fair bidding opportunities. We follow the public procurement process for acquiring goods and services. We work within the Province of New Brunswick Procurement Act and regulations, Crown Construction Contracts Act, and the laws of competitive bidding. Internal policies and procedures are also in place to ensure fair bidding takes place. In accordance with the Procurement Act, the following applies. So goods and services less than $100,000 follow a competitive bidding process, while goods and services greater than $100,000 are publicly tendered and posted on the New Brunswick Opportunities Network website, so NBON. So for anyone that is on this call that is interested in NB Power opportunities, if you are not registered on NBON, I strongly encourage you to go and register on that site, because by registering on that site, you will gain access not only to NB Power opportunities, but to other government opportunities as well. The Crown Construction Contracts Act and regulation applies to every contract for the construction, repair, and alteration of land or structures owned by the Crown. And in accordance with this act, the following applies. So services less than $40,000 follow a competitive bidding process, while services greater than $40,000 are publicly tendered and posted on the NBON site. So what does NB Power purchase? NB Power purchases a variety of materials and services for use at our sites all throughout New Brunswick. The following are some examples of the types of services and materials procured. So heavy duty equipment with or without operators, so things like floats, trucks, backhoes, cranes. Construction services and materials, including aggregate, concrete, fencing, hole digging, and rock drilling services. Forestry, vegetation management services, electrical equipment, security services, IT software and hardware, lawn care, snow removal, catering services, waste removal, and delivering courier services. So this certainly is an all-encompassing list, but it gives you a good snapshot of the larger commodities and services that you purchase. So how do you register? So suppliers who register with NB Power and on NBON will be notified of posted tender opportunities and may receive direct invitations to bid on a tender. So only registered users of NBON can download official tender documents. The official tender documents will provide the details of the tender requirements, site visit details, important deadlines, etc. So registration with NB Power as suppliers. So this part is really important as well. So any supplier who wants to be considered in the procurement of lower value goods and services less than $100,000 will be required to register directly with NB Power. So suppliers should provide their company name, address, contact information, business location, website, and information about the product or service offering, the skill sets they possess, diversity information, and other considerations in an email to alltenders@nbpower.com. And suppliers who wish to participate in NB Power tendering opportunities greater than $100,000 must register on the New Brunswick Opportunities website, otherwise referred to as NBON, which is owned and operated by Service New Brunswick. So suppliers are encouraged to register. It's free of charge to gain access to thousands of tendering opportunities posted every year. NB Power advertises all tenders on the New Brunswick Opportunities website. You will be asked to provide personal and company information and create your own product or service and location profile. So, and there is a training video that you can go on to view on the NBON site. It will actually kind of take you through the registration process. This is something I really want to emphasize in going through this presentation is mandatory requirements. So oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but sometimes we'll get really good bids that come in, but they don't meet mandatory requirements. And it could just be something, it could be something small, or it could be something, they completely missed, like not attending a site visit. So if you don't meet the mandatory requirements, then we cannot go on to evaluate your bid. So mandatory requirements are a set of conditions set out in the specification statement in the work in the solicitation document that must be met without exception. So mandatory and weighted criteria determine who is successful and unsuccessful for NB Power opportunities. Understanding how to fully meet each one is critical for both NB Power and the supplier. NB Power cannot award a contract to a supplier that doesn't meet all the mandatory requirements in the solicitation as of the closing date and time. If it did, all those bidders, proponents, and respondents who did meet the mandatory requirements may have grounds to challenge the decision. Mandatory criteria specified in the solicitation document may include site meetings, which could be in person or via conference, licensing requirements, so if we require a certified electrician or plumber, for example, minimum performance characteristics of equipment, requirements for delivery dates or conditions, so that's, if we require a part by a certain date, we must be able to deliver on that date because it could potentially throw off a construction schedule or generation repairs. Essential minimum qualification or experience of proposed personnel. So often will ask for minimum 5 years experience of supervisory personnel or something to that effect. Safety, if more than 3 employees, registration with WorkSafe NV is required. And if you are providing work for us in what we consider tier 1 work, which is high risk work, you would also be required to register with ISN, which is the NV Power uses for the Contractor Safety Management Program. And there's also environmental and insurance. Other considerations may include, but not limited to, budget limitations, schedule, training, and certifications. Additional information, so terms and conditions and instructions to tenders can be found in the purchasing and tender section on www.nbpower.com under the About Us tab on the right side of the homepage. So these conditions must be followed when providing pricing. The evaluations of bids is typically based on price. NB Power typically enters contracts with a successful bidder. It should also be noted that vendors can attend site investigation meetings when held by NB Power for tendering opportunities in order to network with successful vendor of a project and offer their business as a subcontractor and gain employment as an individual. So sometimes this will happen on some of our larger construction projects. We'll have individuals show up to try and network with larger construction companies to try and become a subcontractor or become employed by the potential successful bidder. So resource websites, we do follow the Procurement Act. So these are some websites you can go and visit. So Procurement Act regulations, Crown Construction Contracts Act regulation, NB Power purchasing and tenders, NB Power First Nation relations. And then there is our contact information. So First Nations Affairs at NB Power. So this is the email address here. Procurement, all tenders at nbpower.com, the phone number, and then for the Brunswick Opportunities Network, as well as the email address, and then the nbpower.com, as well as the email address for NB Power. So that concludes the supplier guide. This is a very kind of condensed version of tendering opportunities and how to tender with NB Power. Are there any questions?
Yeah, no, thanks, Joanie. And so any questions from people in the session? I've got a couple of my own you can go to, and I'll just keep an eye if anyone's raising their hands. Probably the chat box is the most effective way to ask a question at this point. The hands feature tends to hide on me. All right, I've got a couple. Do you have any examples of, so obviously you guys do a lot of, there's probably large bids and large contracts, and then probably a number of, small and medium-sized contracts that are probably ongoing. Do you have examples of services and contracts that are just like always available all the time and you're always looking for more people to bid on them? Or is it just kind of depends on projects that are happening?
It kind of depends on projects that are happening, and our tendering opportunities tend to come in cycles. So some of our tendering, like janitorial, snow removal, long-term maintenance, those types of opportunities we tend to tender annually or biannually.
Okay.
Other things are just as and when required.
Okay. No, that's great. What I guess what makes or sets apart, we'll say, like a a not so good application from a good application? What are some things that the companies can do to kind of maximize their chances that they'll hit all the right boxes and kind of be shown above the rest?
So one of the things we really look at is price. So a lot of our, especially in our lower, usually things that are under $100,000, the key selection criteria would be price. So it would be lowest bid. Safety is another huge concern of ours. Making sure that you're able to meet the mandatory safety requirements. And really it's about paying attention to anything within the document that is listed as a mandatory. And one thing that we find is that tenderers don't always take the opportunity to read through the full document. So sometimes they will miss items like a mandatory site meeting, or they won't include a resume that we've asked to have included for a site supervisor or something like that. So we do in the tender documents themselves for the items that are over $100,000. That part 1 section that we call is really its instructions to tenders, and that's the information you're going to find that's pertinent to how you should submit your bid of any of the mandatories. Section, then we have your scope of work section, and then that last section, which we call section 7, is the pricing details, and in there it does list things that you should submit and that you must submit as part of your proposal or your tender. Anything that is a must or a shall must be or shall be included when you submit your bid. And if any time anyone has any questions, all questions can be sent to all tenders.
Okay, great. And so for people that are not familiar with the process, so a mandatory site meeting, is that something that they have to schedule? I guess with the site, or is it usually like everybody shows up at once kind of thing?
So right now with COVID protocols, things are a little bit different, but the details on how to schedule a site meeting or attend a site meeting would be detailed out in the document. Right now, what typically is happening is providing them an email address and a contact phone number so that they can register, so that we know how many people are going to be in attendance at the site meeting.
Okay.
And the other thing is too, is they're only allowed to attend 1 site meeting. We do hold 2 site meetings, and if we are required to hold more than 2 because of the number of people that are going to come to the meeting, then that allows us to prepare for those as well. Okay,
great. And you had mentioned that there's some bids that are on an annual basis. Is there a certain time of year that those bids kind of pop up, or is it like how often should like a tree trimming business, for example, should they be checking for procurement opportunities?
So tree trimming typically is every 2 years, but then there's also the potential for extension options on this contract as well. So if there is an opportunity that they are looking for, I would strongly suggest that they register at NDLN, because then that's going to ping them and tell them any opportunities that we have that are coming in for tender. And the other thing is too, is they can always send an email to the all tenders inbox to ask, when we potentially have a tendering opportunity coming up for that particular scope of work. And we can definitely tell them, when that tender is up for renewal, or when that contract is up for renewal.
Okay, great. All right. No, you've answered a lot of my questions. And so you said, so for an Indigenous business, that contact section you referenced on the brochure, is there a specific person in charge of helping facilitate Indigenous procurement proposals, or?
So that's me.
Yeah, perfect. Just check.
Yeah, so that's me. So anyone that has any questions, it goes to the all tenders inbox, and then those are forwarded to me. And then if I have any follow-up questions, I follow up with the First Nations Affairs Department within our group. And we actually meet bi-weekly. So there is a lot of communication that happens between the 2 groups.
All right. Oh, that's great. Perfect. And so would you have any advice for community leaders or economic development officers that work with local businesses that they probably get a lot of questions from businesses related to communities? So is the advice of, if there's any questions at all, reach out to you?
Yeah, reach out. I mean, if you have any questions at all, reach out. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. I'd also be more than happy to help facilitate any sort of maybe a little workshop or something on, how to go through the tender documents, and, when looking at a tender document, which sections do you really need to pay attention to? Because I think tendering in general sometimes can be really complicated, especially if you're not familiar with the tender documents. So any questions at all, please reach out and we can certainly help anyone out looking to tender on future opportunities.
Great. And I made a note that you're open and willing to have a workshop at some point. So Jedi might be reaching out in regards to that. Perfect.
Yeah. I think it's important too, because I think sometimes when you look at our tender documents, for example, for items that are over $100,000, there are 90 pages before you even get to the scope of work or the tendering details. So a lot of that can seem really scary to someone if they've never been through that documentation before. And it's really overwhelming too, right? Because there's a lot of legalese and whatnot. So sometimes, you know, the government documents themselves may scare people away because they really don't know what they're looking at. So if we can help navigate people through those documents to tell them what they really need to pay attention to, I certainly don't mind taking time out to do that.
Great. No, that's perfect. And maybe a couple last questions for me if there's no additional ones from the floor. I know NB Power obviously has a number of large projects going on that are probably over multiple years with multiple phases. Maybe you can talk a bit about some of the larger projects that are going on and how people can work within those timelines.
So right now, actually, we have 3 large projects that I'd actually like to speak to. So one is the Advanced Reactor program in New Brunswick. So I just kind of have a little blurb here.
Sure. Yeah.
So it says, as we develop the Advanced Reactor program in New Brunswick, we will be reaching out to the current supply chain to see how we can help grow business in this new sector. The opportunity for a new manufacturing sector in New Brunswick means all businesses will have new opportunities. For more information and to get involved in upcoming Advanced Reactor program events, reach out to Ed Genova, Pam Nicholas, or Claire Harris, or smrnb.ca. Okay. And there's also, if you go to the nbpower.com website, to the About Us tab, there's a section in there with regards to the small nuclear reactors.
Perfect.
The other item, which has been in the news and media for a long time, is the Mactaquac Life Achievement Project. So that NB Power is proposing a project to ensure the station can operate to its intended 100-year lifespan with a modified approach to maintenance and adjusting and replacing equipment over time. So there's going to be opportunities that are coming up on that as we kind of move forward that project. So again, if you're registered as a supplier, and if you see, opportunities, there'll be lots of information that's going ahead with that as well. And then the other one was just recently announced in the media. So that's Malta. So that's the long duration energy storage. So they're developing a breakthrough energy storage solution, enabling renewable, sustainable energy systems in the Atlantic Canada region by storing energy for days or weeks, utilizing safe, readily available raw materials. Malta's technology stores energy and molten salt and is available for on-demand dispatch to meet customer needs. So again, there's potential opportunities for engagement in that as well.
Great. And so the last one you mentioned is new to me. Do these projects apply more to certain areas in the province, or is it fair to say that they've got a provincial kind of approach and there's different regions can take on different projects?
So this one, the Malta one, is in St. John, New Brunswick. So they're developing a 100 megawatt, 10-hour project at a site to be located in industrial St. John. So commissioning is expected in Q4 2024, and it's the first of a kind project. And this site will form the backbone for the storage revolution. So that is located in St. John. I suppose if a company from outside of the area wanted to bring their staff in, like we often have, people from other areas of the province will bid on jobs and come and work those areas. That's definitely a possibility as well.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you taking my questions. Just another call for anybody in this room as a question for Joanie or NB Power processes.
Either I'm really boring, or I just hit everyone's questions right now.
You're very succinct, maybe. Maybe actually, so MBON, you had mentioned that obviously NB Power uses that as a procurement portal. But that's the standard portal for New Brunswick provincial procurement opportunities, right?
Correct. So that'll provide opportunities not just with NB Power, but all of SMB. So, whether it's the school systems, the hospitals, correction facilities. So that's all of the government tendering opportunities are posted on NBON.
Great. And did you, I guess there was discussion earlier today about the definition of an Indigenous business. For MBON, is there there's obviously an ownership element of an Indigenous business. Is there the percentage of employees? Is that taken into consideration as well?
So we're actually just looking at all that stuff now. So we're really just trying to kind of get that stuff underway. And we're looking at program options. But we do use inclusion clauses in our tendering, and we do encourage contractors to subcontract, and we're considering outreach. So part of this Indigenous Supplier Guide is part of an outreach program with the communities, and having the new resource that's starting with us on Monday through JEDI, we're hoping is a really valuable resource for us as well, and helping to drum up business within the First Nations communities. So we're really excited to have her on board, and we're hoping by having her on board, it'll help foster and facilitate more First Nations engagement in our procurement activities.
Great. Perfect.
That's just hot off the press, and I'm very, very excited to have this individual join us.
That's great. I'm happy to hear it. All right. Any other? I guess, Joanie, is there any areas you'd like to cover or emphasize that you haven't done already, or maybe talk a bit more about? Or we think we've covered all the main topics?
I think we've covered all the main topics. Again, I just can't emphasize enough. If you have any questions at all, please reach out. Don't make any assumptions. We're here to help, and we'll do whatever we can to help make things easy.
Perfect. Great. I'm just double checking for questions. If not, thank you very much for your time. So